selected, and then we can actually start the interview itself. Okay, let me check if everything is working correctly. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Everything is working. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, everything is working. 1, 2. It seems it's working correctly. Okay, let me sit into my original position here. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, let us know if everything is working correctly. I know it's very early on my end, but hopefully everyone woke up, going to work. Let us know. Let us know. Let us know. Whew. Let us know. I will also check myself in order if people would not be speaking up. So check myself in order if people. But it seems everything is working fine. There is no lag. Check myself in order if voice is good. But it seems everything. Okay, Will, let me know if you're up to start. Let me know.
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome everyone in the very new episode of my Dev Life show. I'm here today joined with Will, who is a music composer for video games like Star Wars Outlaws, Helldivers 2, and Mortal Kombat 11. I'm very thankful and very honored that you joined us for today's episode of my Dev Life show. And like I'm always saying, let's start with a little bit of introduction. So please introduce yourself for us.
Oh, yeah. I'm Will Roget. I'm a composer for games and most recently also for Japanese anime.
Okay.
Here from Seattle in the USA.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, so my very first question would be, what was your very first contact with video games as a player, if you remember those times of your past?
It's funny, like I know that at some point earlier,
Okay.
maybe I would like go to friends' houses or, maybe they had like a Nintendo or something, but I didn't really get into video games until late in middle school.
I see.
I had a friend, and it was his birthday party, and we all went to like the arcade, and his dad just dropped a bunch of quarters in my hands, and he was like, play whatever you want. And I saw Mortal Kombat for the first time.
Okay.
And I was just like, what is this? This is real people fighting? Oh, yeah, let's go. And yeah, that's like the first memory I have of just being, enraptured by video games. And that introduced me to Mortal Kombat, obviously, and like fighting games. I later played like Street Fighter and Marvel. But also, the martial arts and then like cinema and then all of these other things kind of one after another spun out of that. Later on, it was maybe my first year of high school that I discovered Final Fantasy VII.
Nice.
And that's what introduced me to video game music specifically.
I see.
As like I know you've been talking to myself. I've been a musician my whole life, basically, ever since I was like 3 or 4 playing the piano. But this is where it was clear what I wanted to do with music in my life.
I see. And so we talked about games, but what was your very first contact with music, and what was your very first instrument that you picked up as a kid?
It was definitely the piano. I mean, we lived in West Philly, and we had these neighbors, I guess, who were moving out. And they were just getting rid of their old upright piano, so it was just like, "Hey, you guys want it? Next door, just take it." It was very broken. I mean, and we never got it fixed in any way, shape, or form.
Do you still have it, by the way? Do you still have it, by the way?
Well, this is West Philadelphia, and I'm sure it's in a landfill somewhere by now.
I see.
But no, it was industrial white painted Wurlitzer piano.
Okay.
The keys were uneven. It was like a cartoon that had just got like a dynamite exploded with the teeth, all like some key. Like if you tried to play a glissando, your hands would be cut up for a week. There were like sharp edges on the keys as well, like just biting out at you. And then the actual mechanisms just got more and more broken. Like part of the technique was, I hit an A flat. I got to reach into the piano, unstuck this key, then keep playing, as quickly as my little fingers could do. The left side of the piano was detuned down a semitone, but by the time it got to the top keys, it was detuned up almost a semitone. So it's a miracle that I'm not tone deaf, learning on this monstrosity. But Yeah, we got that, and then I immediately started just playing whatever. I mean, obviously it wasn't really music yet, but
I see.
just noodling around,
Being
and
creative
eventually,
with it, yeah.
I guess, and I guess I think I was a really irritating child because my parents just looked for any excuse to get rid of me, and so this was their way to like, okay, we can just have a break from this annoying kid for like 1 hour a week. That was good enough, and then practice. So obviously that's keeping me occupied as well.
I see.
And so that's kind of how the piano thing started.
I see. And from that point on, what was the first time in your early life when you found out your own style in music?
My own style in music. Do I even know what my own style is now? I don't.
I'm asking it, right? So
I don't know. I mean, what is my own style? I have no idea. It's just kind of
I
like
know that you're
you're
tied
just
to
doing things,
Japanese style music, right? So that's very close to you. So maybe that would be your style,
Perhaps,
or
yeah. I
okay,
mean, that would have started with the Final Fantasy
okay,
back in high school, I think,
okay.
is when I discovered Japanese composition.
I see.
But I mean, before that, I was gravitating towards Chopin and Beethoven.
Okay, okay.
I was never an incredibly technical player
I
when it
see.
came to the piano. It
I
was
see.
more about, um, I just never had a great way with words. And so it was more about, well, this is a way I can communicate
I
emotionally
see. I
that I
see. I
can't
see.
really say with words.
I see.
And it always was about that. It was never about like how awesome and fast my fingers are. It was more about like, well, how can I move the audience?
I see.
Doing recitals growing up was always such a fun experience because even though I was absolutely scared out of my mind to get on stage, as soon as the music started, it was like I get to transport to a different world and bring the audience with
Nice.
me. And even though I wasn't, like the best student or whatever, um, I could clearly tell, and then people would tell me afterwards that like your performances really were what moved us. We came here expecting to see like children showing off, but then suddenly this performance was like, it kind of meant something, and I guess that's maybe what I've held on to
I see.
in terms of music. I'm not here to like look how many notes I can throw at you at any given second, but it's more about like, is there a meaning behind it?
I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate your honesty, by the way. Thank you for that. So I believe all of us creators, we discuss this topic, so that's why I'm starting with this next question on
Mm.
my. I believe that all of us creators who create our own craft in any territory of and forms of art, we always tend to put our inner self into the craft we make, even if it's experience of loss, love, or anything that we experience throughout our past. Is this statement of mine true for your life with music and also music for video games as well?
I think it's inescapable. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, that's what separates us from like the AI
True, true, true,
generation, right? Is
true,
that
true,
like no
true,
matter what you're writing, the style is just like a window in front of it, but
true, true, true,
you're always sort of saying like, well, this is me, but this is me with this particular mask.
true, true,
Just like an actor. I mean, an actor is going in different roles.
true,
How many roles has like Harrison Ford done? But
true.
he's always Harrison Ford.
True, true,
Like,
true,
and
true, true,
how
true.
many Ryan Goslings are there? How many um, you know, so it's all about like, uh, yes, you are adapting to different scenarios, different genres, different instrumentation and whatnot, but it always has some aspect of you as a person in the music.
I see. Was the freedom of music always important for you? Like you mentioned, adaptation to genres, right? Like if there is a company who hires you for composing music for them or a soundtrack to them, was it always important for you to have your total freedom over the music that you compose for them? How do you feel about that?
It's rare to have total freedom
Okay,
in a in a game or film
okay,
score. I
okay,
mean, there's always some boundaries,
okay.
and they're still the client.
True, true,
It's
true,
like
true.
going to a restaurant, and some restaurants do like dealer's choice kind of things, but usually it's like I'm here and I want this steak and I want it cooked
True,
medium
true.
or
It's very
whatever,
true, very true.
and you can't just be like, well, here's chicken. Like they'll be like,
Yeah,
what
true.
is this? This
Understandable.
doesn't
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's sort of like that to some degree. Obviously, not as literal. And some projects have more leeway than others. One of the things that was really fun about the Mortal Kombat scores, for instance, is that they're very wide stylistically. And so I can have some crazy idea of something so silly to do, but as long as I can make it have that violence that is needed by the scene, then it's totally fine, and they wouldn't really question it necessarily.
See.
And yeah, that's sort of the way I like to work, is that with that sort of um, agnosticism towards genre, shall we say. You know, I'd love to bring in other instruments that you wouldn't typically expect, or instruments that are outside of, like, say, the orchestra, and you know, put them together and find a way to make it work.
I see. I see. Moving from music and games to a more personal question would be, I saw that you have this little bear in your chair always
Oh
when
yeah.
you stream. So what's the symbol of it? Is it the symbol of your childhood? I was wondering, because for me, symbol of people's childhood is very important.
Just
And I
chilling here.
believe that we should pursue our inner child in our life, because it really will brings us back to our own creative form that we used to be as kids. Is it something similar to that, or what's the story of that bear?
You would think so, but no. I mean, he's I got him halfway through college,
Okay.
so I wasn't a kid. He's
Okay.
just you know, the closest way to explain Connor is that he's like a pet. You know, some
Okay.
people have cats, some people have dogs. I have Connor Bear.
I can relate to that too, because I have a lot of plushies, because I have allergy for
Oh,
pet hair, and I have plushies too, so I
oh
can
yeah,
relate to that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. You know,
Nice.
he doesn't talk. He's not a human. He's just a pet bear that I
Nice.
keep
Nice.
around. And
Nice. Lovely.
very
Lovely.
easy to get into, like, you know, airplanes with him. I don't have to have like the service animal
True.
talk or
True.
anything
True.
like that.
True.
You know.
True. 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 Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, again, a more personal question from me would be, and I hope that you won't mind me asking this, that we were talking
No,
about
sure.
in private. So, do you think like your family and friends were supportive about your decision that you start pursuing this dream of yours and your passion of yours about music, and also making and
Hmm.
composing music for video games as well? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. One of the things that I think differentiates the culture of America from a lot of European cultures, and
Okay,
obviously there's so many different cultures depending on where you go, but Americans do tend to be on the encouraging side.
I see.
You know, if you have like some
More
random dream that's
open-minded
like somewhat
people, right?
impossible,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's just like we'll say like, yeah, go for it, you know. Whereas Europeans do tend to be a little bit more
strict.
realistic,
Yeah, and
especially German
strict.
people
Yeah,
for some reason.
exactly, exactly,
They're much
exactly.
more like, well, this is going to be very difficult and
Yeah,
perhaps not worth it. Maybe try the, you know, but they're not doing it out of meanness. It's just
true,
like
true,
out of, I mean, it's a cultural thing, and it's also like that's just a friendly thing to do,
true,
because they don't want any of their friends to like suffer or, you
true,
know,
true, true,
whatever.
true.
At least from my understanding of German culture and what my German friends have told
Yeah,
me.
I totally agree with you on
Um,
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and in my case though, I mean, I grew up in an East Coast city,
Okay,
Philadelphia,
okay.
where it we have this way of being how do I say this? This is like I'm gonna be like as politically correct as possible. It's like as friendly. We have a way of being kind but not very nice. So
I
like
see,
when it comes to it, like we will help. We will help
I
each
see,
other
I see,
out
I see,
when help is needed.
I see.
Uh, but we will ridicule you at every step of the way. And that is totally what I got, you know,
I
like
see,
growing up. It
I
was
see,
like, you know, I was made fun of mercilessly as soon as I kind of made my intentions known that I wanted to do video game
I
music,
see,
and you know, the very little encouragement necessarily coming from school.
I see.
But that was fine. I expected that, and you know, I found communities on the internet. Like there used to be a website called vgmusic.com,
Okay,
which is all about MIDI transcriptions of video game music, and
okay.
that's really how I learned how to write music, was just by doing transcriptions. You know, transcribing by ear these like PlayStation and Super Nintendo Japanese role playing games
I
music.
see, I see, I see, I
Um,
see.
and so like I had the encouragement from that, and then I started to do more original music, and kind of online was my encouragement rather than in real life. I mean, you know, it's just if you'll pardon the phrase, ball busting is what we would say, you know, in Philadelphia, which is just like somewhat friendly but also kind of not that friendly, just, you know, antagonism. And it's just their way, you know. It
I
wasn't
see.
it wasn't intended to be cruel or mean.
Yeah,
It's just sort
understandable.
of, how they do it. And it's fine.
I see.
By now they're all like, "Oh yeah, good stuff." And I'm like,
Now they
"Yeah,
are happy
okay."
with it, right? Now they are
Yeah,
believing in
yeah.
you. I see.
Yeah,
I see.
yeah,
I see.
for the most part.
Do you think it's important, by the way, to have a supportive surrounding? I mean, it's asking in a more like mental way. How do you feel about it?
Um, I mean, it helps in some degree,
Okay.
but honestly, it has to come from within.
Okay.
This is a
Okay.
very, very lonely job. It can be very boring, actually, when you're doing like the excruciating, like, oh, I just have to quantize all of these parts, and it's an orchestra, so I have to do the same part like 20 times. It can be very taxing. And if you
I
only
see.
have external support, then, how long can you last like that?
True. True.
So
True.
it does have to come internally,
True.
in my opinion.
True.
Um, the external support is obviously great. I love hearing when people seem to enjoy a
I
score that
see.
I'm doing or whatever. That's awesome, and I'm very grateful for it. But it doesn't really come from that. It comes from like I just have some sort of a creative vision, and I'm like, I really want this to work. What can I do to get from point A to point B? And it can be a very long road from point A to point B, even within just one particular piece of music. But that's kind of the driving force. It's just wanting to see it work.
I see. So you mentioned before that you developed out your music skills by this website that you called out. Have you also had mentors? And do you believe it's more important to have mentors, or it's more easier to develop out skills by yourself if you have passion for something? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I guess my thing is like if you were to take a microscope to everything I do in music, you would like from the distant perspective, it looks like, oh yeah, we'll just write the same music as everyone else. It's nothing like particularly whatever. But then once you take that microscope in and you look at the details, then it's just sort of like, who the hell taught this person how to write? Like, what is all this crap? Are you kidding me? None of it makes sense. Like none of it is similar to how anyone else does like anything. But that's because I did have to learn all the aspects of production on my own. There's just a million, the trials and errors,
But that's the
mostly
risk and the
error.
unique thing about music, right? And that's the passion that drives
Yeah,
you
you
within, like you mentioned it before.
exactly.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
Like it was always possible for me to like, for instance, I could have gone to a conservatory,
I
or I
see.
could have gone to a school that um, specializes in production
I
music
see. I
in
see. I
like
see. I see.
media. There were film scoring programs as well, and they're great. They're wonderful. But in my particular case, I didn't do that.
I see.
It was just trial and error, more transcription, reading every book I possibly could on game and film scoring, which at the time there really wasn't very much. Nowadays, it's a lot better. Plus, we have YouTube now, which is amazing
True.
um, in terms of learning new skills. But no, it was really just trial and error. I was for a little while. I was so envious of the people who got to be like assistant composers, like in Los Angeles. Like they would assist and eventually maybe write additional music under a more prominent film composer or television, especially. Which seemed like, oh man, that's like such an awesome gig. But then the two things about that are number one, you have to already be pretty wealthy in order to survive
I
because
see.
you'll never get paid enough to survive in Los
I
Angeles
see.
just on that alone. And number two, I mean, like, there is always the danger that you'll adopt so much of your composer mentor's style that it becomes difficult to differentiate.
True. Very true. Very
Um,
true. Yeah.
and like you might get some gigs that way for sure,
True.
but you'll just have to be more aware of how to look back at your composition life
True.
before then and intentionally study your old music, which I've done myself as well because I've had similar issues. Intentionally study your old music and see like, all right, well, what was I doing that I'm not doing now, and what were my aesthetic goals back then, and how can I turn that into now with all this extra knowledge that I have of more professional
I see.
production? How can I turn that into something new? That's something I think that composers who are taking that path should perhaps consider.
I see. I can totally relate to what you have just said now because I was playing the violin for like 10 plus years and I dropped it because of my mentor because she always wanted me to play classical music and I wanted to experiment with music more, to find my
Oh,
own
nice.
style. Yeah, and I dropped it and I miss it so much. I was planning actually to get back
Oh,
to it, so I'm still at the planning phase. I still have my violin, by the way, so yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I
hmm.
can totally relate to that. That's if you are passionate with something, you really have to found yourself in that territory, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How have you changed, by the way, as a person from making video game music in other territories of your own life? Or have you changed in any way? How do you feel about that?
Well, what do you mean? Like,
Like, I don't know, do you have like a more strict schedule or do you like view video game scores in a total different way now as a player from being a
uh,
music composer?
well, I mean, times have changed,
Okay.
and we get older and all that anyway. So,
Okay.
you know, I would say that ever since maybe scoring Call of Duty World War II, I've looked at other game scores a little bit differently.
Okay.
I think before that, I mean, I'd scored games before that, but nothing at that level of notoriety. Um, it was kind of weird. Like I sort of like it was like in those old platformer games where like you find like a cheat that lets you like platform skip. And so before I did Call of Duty, I'd never done anything remotely, like top 10 seller of the year, nothing even close. But now it's like, the number one top selling game of the year, which is like insane. Um, but before that, I mean, I would play a game and the music would sort of, I paid attention, but it would sort of like wash over me and I would just enjoy it for what it was. Um, After Call of Duty, it's a little bit more like I can hear the pain that the composer had to go through in order to score this game.
Okay.
Like I can hear, okay, this track they probably were asked to revise it like a cajillion times, or like I'm listening to how the music is interactive, and I'm like, okay, well they must have done this with the maybe this thing with stems or this thing with like beat synchronization, and so it's like that Matrix situation where you don't even see the code anymore. You just say like redhead, all that kind of thing. But I guess in reverse, like I'm in the Matrix, but I can see the code or whatever. This is a terrible analogy, but you see exactly
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
got you with
what I'm
that.
trying to
Yeah.
say. You're just
Yeah.
more aware of what's going on
I
under
see.
the hood and perhaps behind the curtain
I see.
of how it got put together.
I see. And have you became like more analyzing or criticizing about music scores that now you are composing music for video games, or you are more
Hmm.
understanding towards video game music now?
Ironically, I've been more analytical and
Okay.
way less critical,
Okay. Okay.
if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Oh.
So it's more analytical in that like I'm like, okay, how did they do this? What did they do here? Okay,
Okay.
they decided not to have blah 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 and they did it. But way less critical because you
I see.
become painfully aware that there's so many different, and I do kind of almost wish that other people were the same way. You just become so aware that there's so many variables in putting together a soundtrack. I
True.
mean,
True.
you have to realize that every soundtrack that you've ever heard, be it for a game or a film or whatever, was done with less budget than they probably wanted or needed,
I see.
less time than they wanted or needed. There may have been politics involved. There may have been like disagreements between the producer or director or whoever. There might have been a cajillion revisions, and somehow the composer still managed to deliver.
True.
Um, Once you realize that, it's tougher to be critical because you realize like, well, actually, even if I don't love this score, I can still find the beauty. I can still
True.
find
The
the
beauty in the
talent and the
pain, right?
accomplishment.
And the talents. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
still, even if it's a score I'm not super fond of. There's always something in there that's worthy of note. And I find that with every game I play. So that's why I'm much less critical than I used to be, for sure. And also, I think objectively, game scores are getting better, at least in terms of like production quality.
I see.
Um, you'll really rarely hear something that doesn't like this just doesn't sound professional. I think we're so far past
True.
that,
True. True.
which is great. I mean, now we can just focus on the game and the heart of the music, and assume that it's going to be delivered in a package that's like at least as professional as they had time and budget for.
True, true. You mentioned before that there could be some disagreements between the group of people who are making the game itself, even if it's the people who are making the music for the game or even the other parts, territories of
Mhm.
the game. Do you believe in perfect synergy between team members, even if it's about composing a music or making a game or in any other territories that towards the game industry?
I mean, there'll never be a perfect synergy. We're all
Okay.
different people, right? And we
Okay.
also have different aims.
Okay.
Um, so it's all about just how do you manage that.
Okay.
Um, Something I said in an earlier interview was that like what makes the score particularly good is when you can tell that the composer still had fun with it, even if it was a difficult development
I see.
cycle,
I
even if
see.
it was disagreements, revisions, whatever. You can still tell that the composer found some way to just have fun with it and do something cool,
Sure.
or at least that they think is cool. That's sort of what makes a score be less of just like work or craftsmanship and more like art. Is when you can tell that they put something in there that wasn't just I just need to check this cue off the list.
True. True. Very true. So far from your journey, what was your favorite music or soundtrack to compose for video games and why?
That's such a difficult. That's
I
sort of
know.
like asking like, oh, which
It's
one of your children do
it's
you love the
always
most? And it's
harder
like,
to ask than answer, right? So I'm in this
yeah,
lucky position now that it's easier to ask than
yeah.
answer. I would
Well,
never
fine then.
answer
Which one
that.
of your
So
kids? Which one of
yeah,
your kids do you love the most? Which one?
yeah,
No, I'm just
yeah.
kidding. But like different situations have worked out in different ways.
Okay,
That I'm very very grateful for.
I see.
For instance, Mortal Kombat 11 was my first time in that franchise, and I never thought I would have that opportunity. But I really enjoyed being able to write so many different styles of music on
I
that,
see. I see.
especially coming right off of. I mean, I did some other stuff before or in between, but essentially, I was coming from Call of Duty World War II, where I had to write in a very narrow sort of perspective. It had these two poles to it. It had to be historical, but it also had to be, because it's a World War II story, but it also had to sound modern
I see.
and real
I see.
and not like some like documentary or anything. So it was all this like tightrope of like you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do that. Whereas Mortal Kombat was almost the opposite. It was like yes, you have the epicness of like a big story where time is folding in on itself and the universe is at stake. But then also there was all the different civilizations. Like you had Earthrealm, and I wanted to use electronic colors for that and synthesis. And then you had Outworld, and you had world instruments for that. And the Netherrealm was usually big choir. There were all these different colors. And instead of it being like you can't do this, you can't do that, it was more like throw everything in and do whatever. Just put everything in. And that was more. I mean, it was much more difficult to write that way because it's just a lot of notes, but. Um, that was more aesthetically what I'm all about,
I
the
see. I see.
maximalism
I see.
rather than the minimalism.
I see.
So it was very gratifying working on Mortal Kombat 11. I loved working on Star Wars Outlaws as well, because of almost the same exact thing. It was
I
like,
see.
yeah, it's Star Wars, but here's all these other things I want to incorporate. And Outlaws was a perfect opportunity to do that. Um, Pacific Drive was fun too because it's completely different from everything else that I'd written. And it's sort of like this other version of myself that in mainstream games I've never done anything like that before, but I made that style up while working on game jams. And that was such a great opportunity to finally use this style that I've had like in the back pocket for so long, but do it in a more public
I see.
fashion.
I see.
And lastly, I mean, I mentioned the Gundam anime, and that was an incredible experience. Obviously, working on one of the biggest IP in Japan, but also because they were so open to stylistic diversity, um, and so it was just a great experience all around.
I see. Thank you. Thank you again for your honesty.
So I think
So
I've just listed every single.
yeah,
Sorry.
but that makes sense, right? That's a kid in us that we cannot choose between our favorites. So I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you pick your projects? So what's the process behind how do you pick the projects that you are willing to work for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm very lucky right now in that, for the moment, uh, studios tend to come to me
Okay.
and ask me to score rather than
Okay.
me going out to them. I can't overstate how ridiculously lucky I am to be in that situation because it was absolutely not always the case.
I see.
But a lot of it, in terms of like, will I say yes or will I, recommend someone else in my stead, comes down to like, I mean, one, obviously, do I think the game is cool? That's
I
pretty
see.
important.
I see. I
But
see. I see.
it's also like, it's a question of, do I have something new to say about it, or are
I
they
see.
asking me to just write the same score that I already did
I see.
for something else?
I see.
And that's always a difficult. I've had some difficult. Uh, I don't know what the word would be for this, but when I'm saying no to the client, potentially, it would have been an amazing project, but I would have had nothing else to say that's new and different from like
I see.
whatever the other score
I see.
was.
I see. I
It would have
see.
just been a rehash, and I think you only live for so many years, and you can only take on so many games. Every game you take on is like 2 years of your life. So it's kind of like, what's the point in just doing the same exact thing again?
True. True. True.
In my opinion, some people do similar scores, and they're always amazing, and I love everything that they write. So some people can definitely make that work, but in my case, maybe I'm not imaginative enough, but I need a little bit more of a variety in what I'm scoring, and so that's why again I'm so lucky to have worked on so many different franchises that have nothing to do with each other. Because otherwise, if it were just like the same one over and over, I don't think I would be able to do that personally.
I see. Have you ever had that experience or time in your life throughout the journey of you working and composing music where you had to like work on more than one project? And how do you balance not being influenced from one to another?
Yeah, almost always it's multiple projects,
Okay. Okay.
which is great. Again, I'm very grateful for that, but at the same time, it can be quite difficult. I think there was a moment maybe last year or just before that where it was like 5 different scores I had to worry about all at the same
It's a
time.
lot. I can tell.
It was tough. Um, I mean, in terms of not letting one influence the other, it's usually pretty clear from my perspective,
Okay.
like
Okay.
what the sounds are from one
Okay.
and what the other. Um, Usually, there's some kind of a hook that we go into. Like for instance, on Star Wars Outlaws, we right away said we want this to have a video cassette feel to the entire soundscape. So we're going to avoid digital sounds
I
and
see.
only focus on analog sounds. So I can
I
use
see.
synthesizers, but I would be using like the analog synthesizers that I have rather than too much of like the digital fancy. Like there's very little like Serum. I don't use Serum VST very
I
much.
see.
It's a very famous and extremely good digital synth, but it leads you into a very digital style of sound design that would not have worked very well for this project. Um, Conversely, I think at the same time I was working on Outlaws, I was working on Gundam, for instance, which did have more of like a digital sound to it. That was totally fair game. And then also Mortal Kombat 1 DLC, the Chaos Reigns DLC, a lot of digital and extremely cutting edge modern synthesis. New types of synths like Newfangled Generate is one of the synths I use a ton on that score, and granular synthesis as well. So like things that were more on the digital side, and that just helped me to differentiate between the two sound worlds. As you're going through a score and you're writing cue after cue, you'll eventually amass a certain number of sounds that you've created for the score,
I see.
and you can just kind of keep using those, and that helps to differentiate one score from another.
I see.
I still try to do multiple pieces of music within one project file, depending on, in the case of Outlaws, depending on faction
I
or
see.
planet.
I see.
So, for instance, all of the Toshara music is in one file, or all of the Imperial music is in one file. All of the Pike music is just one file, and that lets me make sure that I'm sticking to the sounds that I've already
I see.
created
I see. I see. I
for
see.
this game, for that
I
faction.
see.
Um, and then I'll go off and work on, I don't know, Mortal Kombat, and it's one thing, and it basically you gradually, it's not like, it's more like the scores gradually grow apart from each other. And that's why I don't think I've ever necessarily worried about, oh, this score sounds too much like this one. It's just
I see.
naturally just happened.
I see. So you mentioned before that it can be very tiring to work in this industry and composing music as forms of art for video games. How do you balance your free time and also your work? And are you influenced by your free time into your work?
What free time? No, I would say the way I do it is maybe not the healthiest thing in the world, but
Okay.
it's working for me so far.
Okay.
And if I'm tired, I just walk away.
Okay.
You know, I just like,
Is it
you know,
easy to
go
walk
take a
away, by
nap.
the way, for you? Is it easy, or do you find it easy to
If
walk away?
if I'm getting nothing done, then like it's like, what am I doing here? I'm just sitting, you know. So I'll just you know, take a nap
I
or
see, I
like
see, I see, I
do
see.
stupid stuff, go play a game, go on YouTube, just like take my mind off of it. Because
I
the
see.
way that I write music is very, I try to be very impulsive and very bold.
I see, I see, I see.
And the only way for that to work is if you do the crazy stupid thing, just do it. Put it in there. Don't think too much about like, is this good or not? Just do it. And then
As the
go away,
creator
do something
mastermind in
else.
us, right?
Yeah, go off and do something else and then come back to it and review it and be like, okay, I see what you did past me. Now let's make this actually work. So like usually I'll all of my crazy weird ideas, or maybe writing the new section of a piece or sketching or whatever. I'll try to do that at night. And then in the morning, once I've rested and gotten perspective on it, then I'll come back and like fix it and make it into actual music rather than absurdity.
Was there some point in your life when you said that, okay, it's not working and I have to redo everything?
Um, do you mean like
Like if you
like
had a
what do you
crazy
mean?
idea, like you mentioned, but you realize later that you're like, okay, it's not working for me and I have to redo everything that I did before.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, I think as I get more mature in composition,
Okay.
I'm much faster to like write a section of music and
Okay.
then just be
Okay.
like, this actually doesn't work, and I'll just try something else. Or like an instrument that, you know, I might spend. I mean, just like this week, or weekend, I spent so long designing this like one patch. It was like a bass patch for this piece I'm working on now. Spent so long, and I was like, this is exactly what I need. And then I loaded up a different synthesizer and like pressed one note, and I was like, nope, never mind, this one's better, and just threw out the entire thing that I just worked so hard on. But the other one was better, and that's all there was to it. You know, I designed it for something else, so I'd had to redesign it a little bit, but it was just better. And I think that as you go on, it's easier to make that kind of a decision, to just like, you know what, it's, you know, there's no point in doing stuff that doesn't fit or that isn't as cool as you thought it was.
True.
So just you just get better at moving on and being confident that you'll come up with something cool later on.
I see. Are you, by the way, strict to your projects? Like you always like criticizing yourself, or are you like a more person who is like always delivering and not questioning himself? How do you feel about your projects that you worked on so far? Like, are you always confident about what you make, like you said before, or there are some times when you like start to question your work and not sure if it's working or not?
It depends, I think. I
Okay,
mean,
okay.
there've definitely been. It goes both ways, actually. There's been cues where I was like, "Yes, this is so cool." Oh yeah, and then I hand it in, and then the developers are like, "No," and then it's like, "Oh, this sucks." And then there's been other times when I've handed something in and I've just said like, "I don't know about this one, man. I don't know," and they're like, "No, it's fine. It's good." And I was like, "Okay."
You
And
were
then later
hyping
on,
up, right?
yeah, well, then later on, once we have like the live instruments, then I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it, and maybe my mix helps, bring it closer to what I'd envisioned. So it goes both ways. I mean, I do a lot of review before I turn anything in. Like for instance, if I'm working on like a cutscene, or all of like the Gundam stuff, then I'll do my work in Reaper, then I'll render it to audio and then bring it into Vegas, which is my video editor. And then I'll watch it out of context, and I'll just watch, or sorry, in context with the video, but I don't have Reaper in front of me. It's just Vegas, so I'm just watching this as if it's theatrical, and it's much easier to have perspective that way. Or if it's not a cutscene, if it's just a piece of music for a game or whatever, I'll still load it in like a 2-track editor in like Goldwave, and I'll press play and maybe close my eyes and just listen and look at the mix mentally and see like, okay, and then I'll have like I always keep like a text file that's just a big list. It's like a to-do list or a bug list if you want. And I'll just listen through and I'll take notes. So I'm like, okay, do this, change this, 20 seconds, change this, 40 seconds, whatever. And then I'll go back to the piece and then I'll do all of that, render it again, do the same review, and just keep doing that over and over until I can't think of anything else to improve it. And then I turn it in. And that's how I do every piece, basically.
Let's see. Can you, by the way, imagine yourself composing a music and building a game around it? Like having your very own game? Because you mentioned that you're passionate about not just music itself, but video games as well. Can you imagine yourself in the future making your very own game around or surrounding the music that you composed? Built around the music
At the
that
moment,
you composed?
No.
Okay.
At the moment, no.
Okay.
I'm just not that creative, I guess. I don't know what to say.
I wouldn't say
You know,
that.
music.
Why are you
music
saying
is
this?
music is my language. It's not. I'm not like that kind of a creative. I can't do anything.
Yeah, but
visual.
with music, you're creating words, right? So that would make total sense.
Yeah, exactly.
To me.
But like, I'm not the visual kind of creative
see,
necessarily.
I see.
And I'm at the point where I can admit game development is extraordinarily difficult. And I'm not the type of person who will just like waltz in and think like, well, surely I can, It's like I recognize and respect like just how difficult it is. And I think we're incredibly lucky right now with the state of what we at least get to play in gaming. So many things have been figured out. Like we figured out how to move the character, which sounds simple until you realize, go back to PlayStation 1 and just try playing any of those 3D games and see how far you get with like the tank controls and whatever was going on Tomb Raider 1 and 2. Like we figured a lot of stuff out, and I'm very grateful that now you can just like get a game and immediately figure it out. Immediately just start playing like Elden Ring, for instance. And it can be very difficult. But we've gotten so good at teaching the player the nuances of our particular game that, from my perspective, I think the time for an outsider like myself to just like show up and do something, you would definitely need a lot more experience in some other kind of visual field. I'm not sure exactly. I take that back because I can't speak for anyone else besides myself. But
yeah, but you mentioned that you have this mentality of learning everything by your own, right? So it would totally make sense, and I believe in you that if you could do that with music and have this unique style of yours, that you could also do that with everything in life, right? In my opinion, at least.
I don't know if I would. I don't know if I necessarily would want to.
I see. I got you.
Because like if I had some idea in particular that it's like I want to do this, then sure, yeah, of course I would drop everything.
Maybe it's there, but you haven't opened the door to release it. Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah, who knows? Yeah. Until then, I love Metal Gear and I love Uncharted and I love Elden Ring.
Uncharted, yeah. Elden Ring, yeah.
Those are my like trio of and Final Fantasy, of course. Yeah. And that's kind of they're still making these games, so I'm very happy to just enjoy them as they go on.
Very true. When you play games as a player, what do you play games for? Is it the story, the gameplay? What kind of experiences are you trying to find in games? Or is it the music itself? Or everything combined together?
Yeah, kind of everything. I mean, it depends on the genre. Like, I loved Metal Gear for the story and for like outwitting the guards and all that. Which, by the way, is why I love Star Wars Outlaws. It's just like that sense of like I'm here to outwit the AI.
True.
And it almost always fails, but like I try, and then when it does succeed, and I can get out of that compound or whatever without anyone seeing me, it's just the most satisfying thing.
Very true.
you can absolutely abuse the guards in this game, and it's so funny after a while. Same with Metal Gear too, actually. I loved all of the Metal Gear games, even the 2D ones from way back in the day. But yeah, I think I've become more of a story gamer as of late.
I see.
I loved Alan Wake 2 for the story and control. And believe it or not, I do not play Elden Ring or Dark Souls or Bloodborne for like punishing gameplay or anything like that. I actually don't. I'm not going to say I don't care. It is fun, but like I play it for the exploration and for the story, and I think the story is more difficult than the gameplay, honestly.
Very true.
Piecing it all together and trying to figure out what's going on here.
Exactly.
And especially with the DLC of Elden Ring, the exploration is so incredibly well done. You look at your map and you think like, I want to see what's over here, but there seems to be no way to get there, and so it's almost like a puzzle of figuring out, well, how do I get there?
Yeah, exactly.
And along the way, you see the abyss has shown up, and you're like, what? How did? Okay, I guess we're here now. Yeah. And all of these new discoveries, and I love that about Bloodborne and Elden Ring especially.
I love that story of Elden Ring boss. I'm not recalling his name because I can't remember that boss's name, but it was something about he sacrificed his own mental health in order for him to have this horse, and he could ride the horse because he had this magic with which he could ride on that horse because he wasn't that heavy like he was in real life. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
General Radahn.
Yeah, exactly. Radahn. Yeah, exactly.
And Leonard the horse.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are small snippets of the story and lore elements, like you said, you have to piece together to have this whole image. And that's what I liked about the BioShock franchise as well, that you had these cassette tapes in those games as well, and you had to piece together the whole story. Yeah. So I believe that all of us creators who make our own thing, we always want to give a message with our own craft that we make. What was your very inner soul message that you wanted to give up, or give out with your music that you composed?
I don't think I have a message per se, but I think that have you ever played Metal Gear Solid 3 by any chance?
I did.
You know how every boss in that game, was it the Cobra unit? They were always named after some aspect that they bring into battle, like the fury, the fear, the sorrow, the joy, all that.
Yeah.
If I could be reduced to any one of those, it would probably be the fear. I don't know why.
Okay.
But you can kind of hear I have a sort of timidity where you can sort of, and this is me being self-critical, but you can sort of hear that you can hear the middle child personality in my music. I think a little bit. There's some people who write and it's very bold and very me, listen to me right now. But that's not really, even in my louder pieces, that's not really what's going on. It's more about
No, I understand. Yeah, I wasn't meaning that it's a must thing to have. It's just if you take a look back at what kind of soundtrack you did and composed, I'm sure that you are aware of your, we discussed it and you were laughing at it, your own style and the message that you want, even if it's not you want to give out to the players, right, when they are listening to it, but you still did that because it's you in the music, right? So you can't avoid it, in my opinion.
Yeah, so you listen to the music, and even if it's something that seems on the surface to be very brash and bold, my personality is not really that. I'm rather introverted, believe it or not.
I see.
And so you'll see that kind of middle child sort of inward looking, which I think is kind of cool because you can hear upon many listens new details that I've sort of hidden and are not just right up in your face. But there's I like to believe there's a little bit of depth to it as a result. So if you were to say, there's nothing preachy about that. There's nothing I'm trying to say. It's more.
No, I understand that. It's more like you. It's in my opinion, it doesn't have to preach in any way. It's just nice to have these messages because I always argued with my literature teacher here in Hungary that she always told us that we as consumers of any forms of art, we never will understand the exact vision or the exact message that was out there to give out by the creator itself. We always thought that by like analyzing poems, and I was the only one in the class who said that it's not true, because I believe that all of us who are open-minded or who have gone through the very similar and exact things that one of those creators, for example, of those poems have been through as well, we can relate to those stories, right? It's very rare, like those very rare gems when you can connect through the form of art with the creator of that art, right? As a consumer of that art. And it's a bridge, really. And it will be probably maybe just, I don't know, one person who out of, I don't know, 1 million who will understand that creative person. But I think it's possible, in my opinion. Like, it's not like impossible, like I said, my literature teacher told us. And that's the beauty, in my opinion, because you can really relate to that person. It's like a real connection, even if you never have spoken to that person in real life, right? That's that bridge, emotional bridge, in my opinion. And even if, like you said it's very true. Like, even if they didn't mean to like have that bridge or make that bridge, but they still ended up having that bridge, because at the end of the day, I think that all of us human beings want to understand ourselves as well, understand our times that we have been through, even if it's not intentional, and even if it's like not our strict mind telling us to do that, but we do it because we have passion for some forms of art that we like can release this, ideas and thoughts and emotions by. So yeah.
Once you hit render on the piece of music you're writing, and then it goes to the client and they say, yes, approved. And then it goes into the game or to the film or whatever. And now it's out into the public. It doesn't really belong to you anymore. It belongs to the world.
True.
And so anyone who's listening to it can interpret
But in my
however they
opinion,
want.
it's still you, right? Yeah. At least in my opinion.
I mean, legally, yeah, okay, sure. It belongs to like whoever. But like, I mean, they have the right, and this is the point of art, to analyze in any way they want. They can take anything from this music. They can be inspired by it. They can be they can be moved by it for different reasons than we could ever have.
No, it's very true. It's very true.
We could ever have predicted.
It's very true.
So yeah, to that point, it's I might be trying to say something, but I wouldn't even say it necessarily matters.
And I think it does. I think it does. It's not just
if someone were to try and say like, oh well, Will clearly meant blah 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 blah, then it's like, cool, that's your opinion. It might be completely wrong, but
and what if it isn't? Like, how do you feel if you really could touch, and you are really touching a person, and he totally relates to your life and surroundings that happen to you, and that you were, even if it's not an intentional level, but you did have those moments from your life put into the music. What happens if those people can relate to that? Like, if they understand?
Great.
Is it a good feeling?
I mean, it just is what it is. It's just what I. Again, it doesn't belong to me anymore. So, like, if they have any reaction to it, I'm very grateful for that. For sure.
I see. What about the future? What kind of instruments would you like to pick up for the future of your life, if you like have any plans to like learn new instruments?
Oh, I don't know. I just got the bass flute, which I was just recording earlier today.
Okay.
This was a lot of fun to play.
Okay.
I've been a flute player for quite some time.
Okay.
And it's nice to expand on the classical flute, which I've been playing. I don't necessarily have any new plans for things next. I mean, eventually I'd like to learn the piccolo just to have it. All my friends tell me that I'm going to be miserable and regret that decision, but it's nice to have. I'm just like morbidly curious. And maybe the soprano sax. I've danced around that. Same reaction. My friends are like, you should not play the soprano of all the saxes. Why would you want soprano? And I don't know. I think it might be cool to do something with that. I really enjoy writing like small folk ensemble music, and I haven't really had too many opportunities to do that in games, but it's something as like a side project that would be kind of cool. I probably wouldn't play the solos myself, but it would be nice to be able to like practice on it and get a better sense of how to write for the instrument by doing that. And eventually I would like to learn some sort of a string instrument properly, like a real string instrument. I do a lot with playing. Oh, where is it? Well, somewhere over there I have a mandolin and I play it with a bow. as if it's a violin, but it sounds horrible, but like it's intentionally horrible, and I can auto tune and effects, and it can be really cool. I use that a lot in Mortal Kombat.
I see.
Same with the electric bass. I'll play with the double bass bow. It would be nice to play maybe like a actual electric cello or something like that once I have the room for it. Just another tool in the arsenal. And then I'd still, of course, I have a brilliant electric cello player that I usually work with. Two of them, in fact, Sebastian Frey and Bradley Hawkins. And so, yeah, I'll still hire them for like the real deal, but every once in a while, I just have just these little things that I want to try out, and it's nice to just come up with stuff on the fly and on my own.
I see. So you mentioned that you really have this passion for Japanese type of music and Japanese style music, and I believe, at least from my opinion and my experience as a listener to all kinds of Japanese songs, for example, from Final Fantasy soundtracks, since my all-time favorite game is Final Fantasy X. I have a real strong emotional like connection with that game because I replay it every year since the very first time when I started playing that. My grandfather passed away, and since then I'm trying to secure my childhood by playing and always stopping at the end of the game and not defeating, since it's really like my this habit of replaying the game. And I believe that all these like Final Fantasy soundtracks has this melancholical and sad vibes, which are very beautiful in my opinion. Do you consider yourself as a person who loves more melancholical vibes and sad vibes, or more happier vibes when you're listening to music and also composing your own music?
Oh,
But you go
it's
for more
balanced.
Okay.
Yeah, balance. I mean, some days one way, some days another.
Okay.
Like some days I need like the anger of like metal or
Okay.
that kind of stuff. And some days I need something uplifting like gospel. I love gospel music as well. So it just depends. It just depends on time of day as well and all of that. One of the most difficult things that I've ever done as a composer was I was working on a game called Dead Island 2, except this was before it was rebooted.
Okay.
So the final game that's called Dead Island 2 is like 3 steps rebooted from what I worked on. But I worked on the original one, and that was an all California rock soundtrack. Very upbeat, lots of different styles and eras of California rock music. And unfortunately, while I was writing that, I moved to Seattle from San Francisco, and it was a shocking. It was a huge culture shock, actually. I had almost no friends here, and it was very difficult to have the same kind of social life that I had built up in San Francisco over like 7 years. So it was kind of a very depressing time. There's nothing more difficult than being sad in real life, but then having to write like happy music for like a video game. There's nothing more difficult than that. So that was rough, like the mismatch. But Pacific Drive, on the other hand, every time I needed any inspiration for that game, I literally could just look out the window, because I live in Seattle. This is vaguely the part of the country where the game takes place, and it has that sort of foggy grayness to it. And it was such an easy translation. I could just literally be like, oh yeah, it's just this, and then pick up a guitar or something. So it was a very seamless score. Different scores are usually somewhere in between, but it's usually the matching that you want to do. It's not about like I always want to be happy or I always want to be sad or anything.
True, very true. It's interesting for me that you mentioned when you were very sad, you still had to write the happy music, because I believe that it's still the person in us, right, who wants to be happy though at those times, and that's how you end up hitting and delivering the happiness, right? So I think that creators like you who make their own craft, they always like are not being able to live with their craft, right? So when they are like wants to be happy and even they are sad, they will end up being or doing or making like more happier music, in my opinion. Because it's true for me as a writer. When I was sad, I always like felt that I'm in this position of me being sad, but I still ended up writing, happier stories because I wanted to be in that position, right?
It could be. I don't know. I mean, like in this case, it was It was more of a technical thing.
I see.
I just knew technically what I needed to do for each
I
piece,
see.
and so it's like just going through it. The thing about writing music is that you have to listen to whatever it is you're writing
I see.
over and over and over again, thousands of times as it's gradually being built by yourself.
True.
It can be a very tedious job, but you can't listen to music while you're doing it because you're writing the music. So it's actually like torture in a way, you know?
I see.
Not really. Obviously, I'm very grateful, but like, you know, it can be very taxing. One of the most difficult things also, try to go to bed after working on an action cue all night and then go immediately to bed. It is impossible. You will stay up in bed. The music will just keep dancing in your head all night. It's so frustrating.
The
It's
party
tough.
time in your
It's
head,
like
right?
the worst. Yeah, it just never ends. It's like, shut up, you know.
I know that feeling as a writer, so I can totally relate to that. Yeah. But that's also again the passion, right? So that you're passionate and care about the project that you make and the music that you make. I feel like it's very important, and people don't realize that. In my opinion, those people who like make forms of art, they have to and they will work more than those people who just let's say work as a normal job, in an office or a 9 to 5 job, in my opinion, because it really takes more time to invest to improve yourself and challenge yourself. And in my opinion, in the 9 to 5 jobs, it's mostly you end up being like not having the option to challenge yourself and to evolve as a human being in your territory of knowledge. But at forms of art, you have to be better at your own craft, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of creativity with
True.
almost any job that you have, you know, especially once you're thinking about becoming more senior in literally any discipline and any field and industry I can think of. There's always some level of creative. Otherwise, they would just replace us with
it is, but still,
AI
I believe
whatever,
that in forms of art, if you make any form of art, it's still like it's understandable that creative process is there and you can be more creative. But at the end of the day, where it's not about like making any forms of art, like I mentioned, like a normal office job, it's still like society treats those people like they cannot challenge themselves that much, in my opinion. Like it's not a society rule, but I would say it's like it's like a common thing to think that they cannot challenge themselves, although they can, like you said, and I totally agree with you. But it's like they still end up in this queue or field where they feel like it's just a job.
Well, one thing I will say is that anything where you have to create is very tiring mentally.
True.
Which is why I mentioned, like, if I just feel tired, I'll just go take a nap.
True.
Like I get so, I mean, physical exhaustion is real as well, but mental exhaustion just sneaks up on you much more subtly. There's no hints at it. It just sort of
It's
stops.
harder to get
and then
away from that, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, especially recently, I can't tell you how many times I've just like I've had a definite idea of what I want to do, and it's like, oh, I just have to do this and this and this and this, and I want to keep going, but like, you know, the human brain can only take so much. So I was like, okay, just give me like 2 seconds, and then I'll like take a nap at my desk. I try to, you know, that's like, okay, I slept for 5 minutes, which will give me maybe 30 minutes of more work time. Let's see if I can finish in that time, and then it just gets shorter and shorter, and then it's like, all right, I got to go to bed. This is not helpful, you know. That's the reality, you know, the mental fatigue, especially coming from that part of the brain, it definitely sneaks up on you, and it's something to be aware of.
True, very true. Before I ask some more questions, are you down to answer some questions from my community and chat if there would be any questions?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I do have to kind of get going in just a little bit, but
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
you know.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let us know if there is any question. Let us know. Let us know. If there is any question, let us know. By the way, while we wait for questions, a more personal question as for like closing questions would be from me. Do you think like by composing music for video games that you have found yourself in life, that now you're at the right spot of your life? How do you feel about that? Like, do you think like it was always your ultimate calling of, like you said before, to write and compose music?
Well, I mean, I enjoy it, and I'm very grateful for it. And I've been writing music for games for longer than I've not been writing music for games, if you
Okay.
think about it.
Okay.
For more than half of my life, which is such a weird thing to say. But no, I'm incredibly grateful for the career, and at the moment, it's just what I want to do. It's what I love doing, and I think that there's still a lot of territory to explore there.
I see.
So I haven't gotten bored yet. Maybe one day when I am bored or something, then I'll be like, nah, I want to actually develop games now or something.
Like we
But
discussed it, yeah.
until then, yeah, maybe
You
eventually
will remember my
that time will
idea
come.
that we talked about here now, right?
Sure, yeah. But until then, no, I mean, there are other fields that I'm looking into now
I see.
potentially.
I see. I see.
But the thing is, like, you, I couldn't tell you what I guess like the TV equivalent of screen space ambient occlusion. I couldn't tell you what that was. Or like what the TV equivalent of, I don't know, ray traced point sourced audio. You know what I mean? Like it's the technical side of games that no matter what is always going to fascinate me. Whereas cinematography and the film and TV, I know what I love, but I've never really had the opportunity to really dive into how does it work? How do TV editors do their job? How did you whatever? Whereas I've had the opportunity to befriend so many people in games like VFX artists and 3D modelers and texture artists and programmers and every single person on the audio team and QA as well and production. And so uh, that's kind of one of the things that keeps pulling me back to video games is that I'm still fascinated by just how games are made, which again is actually another reason why I don't want to just like ignorantly show up and be like, I could do that. How hard is it? No, I know exactly how hard it is. And that's why I'm not doing it. I'll leave that to the people. I'll leave that to the people who
But you
wake
can
up
still
every
form
day
a
and go to
team,
bed
right? And
every day,
write the
and they're
music.
always thinking about this is what I want to do.
True,
I want to do VFX. I want to do gameplay
True,
coding.
true,
I'll
true,
leave it to them.
true.
But for the moment, I wake up every day and go to bed every day thinking about music composition, and that's where I'm at.
I see. I see. Okay. So my ultimate closing question would be, what about the future? What projects would you like to work for if you had the possibility to work on some projects that you really would
Yeah,
want to work for?
for sure. I mean, one thing I mentioned to another a friend of mine is that I never, not since a very long time ago, have I had the opportunity to write fantasy music.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I've just never, for whatever reason, most of my stuff it skews towards either modern era or like futuristic or like sci-fi or whatever.
I see.
I've never really done fantasy for a major title, which I think
see.
would be pretty cool. Be interesting to try. Um, there's a
Hopefully
certain
studios are listening, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if they think that my sound is right or they want to give me a shot, I'm obviously not going to say no. I'm always looking for like different new things.
I see.
Um, there's certain aesthetics that are more specific and difficult to explain just in a voice call, but like that I also want to try out. For instance, I love Ghost in the Shell, the anime and the TV show, like the movie anime and then the TV show anime, I should have said, standalone conflicts. And that type of sound, I think, resonates with me a lot now that I live in Seattle. I think I did something that you might call the rural and woods version of that for Pacific Drive. But I would love an opportunity to do an urban version of that. Like, what would a city sound like with that kind of, almost like you say, melancholy, but like just sort of like a desaturated blue kind of vibe to it.
I see.
And I think that there's some games that are made that have that. I think the closest that I can think of off the top of my head is maybe Heavy Rain.
Okay.
And to some other extent, Detroit Become Human, although that one's a little more futuristic.
Okay.
But just that idea of like, I've always been a city kid. And just the idea of writing city music. I've never really had an opportunity to do that.
I see.
But I think it could be really cool and something that I would love to try eventually. So almost like the two most extreme opposites, like fantasy and then like just real life modern day.
Or
scene.
combining
I
the
think
two, right? And it will be a third one.
it would be an isekai, basically. I mean,
Yeah.
actually, they did that. Forspoken, right?
Yeah,
That was a really cool score.
exactly.
Bear McCreary and Gary Scheinman, and so that just things like that. I think might be an interesting new challenge.
I see. Thank you. Oh, I thought that there is a question, but no, it wasn't a question. So your friend just said, "Oh, I dropped in late, but the first thing I heard was Ghost in the Shell." Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Nice. So my only addition question would be that you always mentioned throughout our interview that you always liked and loved to challenge yourself. Do you think that this mindset and mentality was always there in your life, or is it something that you developed out throughout the years?
You know what? When I first started writing music, going way back to like when I was on the VG Music forums,
Okay.
with the other teenagers on this forum, whatever. I always said like, don't write the same music twice.
I see.
Don't write the same piece twice.
I see.
With back then, I was very extreme about it, where it was like, okay, you've already written an orchestral piece. Now you have to write rock music. It was like, all right, like calm down, kid, calm down. It doesn't have to be that crazy, but I still stand by it. One of the beautiful things about our field as music composers is that once you've done something once, no matter how hard it was, doing it again is actually way easier. It's like the reverse of like New Game Plus on game. It's actually like way easier doing it. So then you have to kind of keep building and trying new things, inventing new things. You can get bored quite easily.
I see. Thank you. Oh, so your friend actually asked the question. How do you like to begin a new piece? I'm not sure what new piece he is asking about, but what kind of new
Well,
piece?
I mean, yeah. So normally it starts with text.
Okay.
Quite literally.
A new piece
when
of.
I'm starting a new
okay.
score.
Sorry. Yeah, new score. Yeah. Okay.
When I'm starting a new score, I'll have like a text document and I'll list just ideas, very blue sky. It doesn't have to have anything to do with music. It could just be like a series of colors.
Okay.
Or just anything, any vague ideas.
Okay.
And then maybe I'll go read some books that might be relevant or watch some movies that might be relevant. And eventually I'll start to have musical ideas. Oops, sorry, my bear just hit the keyboard. Eventually I'll start to have musical ideas. And then I'll start by sketching on paper usually. And once I'm satisfied with that and I'm like, okay, this is enough ideas here, then I'll go into the DAW. I'll go into Reaper and I'll start producing there.
I see. Thank you for the question, by the way. Sorry, and thank you for your answer as well. Okay, so like I said, I will need some more of your minutes of stream, but for those who were watching our episode, thank you for tuning in, and I really appreciate your honesty and your time, Will. So thank you for you too as well. It was really a pleasure of mine and an honor. And
yeah, thanks for having me.
Like I said, for those who are watching us live or will be watching back the VOD version and the YouTube edited version, intro and outro later this year, thank you for watching us and have a nice day or night depending where you live.